Welcome to Chaos and Carry Ons. This October, we're dedicating every Monday to sharing stories and conversations about breast cancer. These episodes are deeply personal and may be heavy at times, so here's your trigger warning. We're going to be discussing diagnosis, biopsies, treatment, and the emotional impact of cancer. So grab some tissues and remember, you're not alone in this journey.
I'm Shelby, one of the hosts of the Chaos and Carry Ons podcast, and I am a triple negative breast cancer survivor. Today, I'll be sharing my story, the highs, the lows, and everything in between.
I'm Stephanie. I'm the other host of Chaos and Carry Ons, just in case you're listening to this for the first time and you listen to it because you have been newly diagnosed or maybe your best friend has. So Shelby's going to be giving you more of the patient side of it, and I'm going to be giving you more of the support side of it.
I don't really know how to start this or where to begin other than the beginning, and I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm probably going to cry. So we're going to cut out as much of that as we can, but I'm just going to try to talk through it and get through it. So a little backstory. In 2023, that was the year I was diagnosed, I turned 30 in February, and probably around June or July, I started having pain in my breast, and I thought I just pegged it off as cycle related, hormones, whatever, and just kind of brushed it off, went on about my life. After several months of this, one night I was laying in bed and I decided to just feel around and see if I could figure out what was causing the pain. It wasn't really like a stabbing pain. It was just like an ache. Ache would be the best way I could describe it. So the second that I felt this lump, my heart dropped and I had this pit in my stomach. I knew immediately what it was. I felt it that one time. I grabbed my phone and started Googling everything because my gynecologist had this spiel that she says every time I go, if it moves, if it hurts, if it comes and goes with your cycle, you're fine. Don't worry about it. But if it doesn't move, it doesn't hurt, and it doesn't come and go, then you need to call the doctor. Well, I didn't know what to do because I have symptoms on both sides. It does hurt, but it wasn't moving, and it kind of was coming and going. So I just absolutely spazzed. I freaked out. And Jordan is the more realistic of the two of us. I normally am a very positive person, but that was a slap to the face, and I just immediately went worst case scenario. In this moment, he is like, okay, do not freak out until there's something to freak out about, which is so easy to say when it's not you going through this. And so I can tell you that I was just like, okay, I pulled it together. He fell asleep, but I did not. I laid there. I was Googling all night long, probably midnight or 1 a.m. I just went and I fell to the ground beside where Taylor was sleeping. And this is the part that's going to make me emotional. I didn't think, when I felt this, I didn't know anything at that point, but my mind automatically went to her. And so I'm laying there and I fell to my knees and was just like, Lord, please no. It's really hard. I go back to bed. I don't think I slept that night. Ironically enough, this was on a Sunday night and I already had a gynecology appointment scheduled for that Tuesday anyways. And this is just proof that God's timing is perfect all the time. And I already had that appointment scheduled. So I went to her and we go through the entire appointment. I had her fill that and she said, I think it's probably fibrocystic. I'm probably butchering this word. I think it's called fibrocystic something something. Basically, it was a cyst or really dense tissue. And I was known for having dense tissue, and I had actually voiced to her the year before that scared me that there would be something there and I wouldn't feel it because of that issue. And so I had her feel it and she was like, no, I think I felt it move, so I think it's fine. And I said, well, I'm glad that you felt it move because I have not felt it move, and that's what scared me. When I said that, I saw her face change and she said, well, let me feel it again. And I could see all over her face that she did not feel it move. And she was in agreement with me that it didn't move. So she said, okay, I'm sure it's going to be fine because you're 30. You have no family history. I had no cancer in my family at all. So this was just totally off my radar. So she goes ahead, she orders a mammogram and an ultrasound, mostly for my peace of mind because she just really felt like it was going to be okay. Keep in mind, this is on Tuesday, 2 days after I felt this for the first time. On Thursday, I go in for a mammogram and ultrasound. It actually was supposed to be scheduled like 2 weeks later, but I called and wore the phone out until I found a cancellation and they moved it up. Again, God's timing is perfect. And so I went through mammogram, ultrasound, had to go back and do another mammogram, and then go back into the ultrasound room. And I'm by myself this entire time. At this point, Jordan, Stephanie, and one other friend were the only ones that knew anything was going on. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't tell my mother-in-law. Like, nobody knew anything. And so I went by myself because I just truly expected it to be fine. I thought it's going to be a cyst. You know, she was right. I don't have family history. I'm young. I'm healthy. I'm fine. So I get through and the radiologist comes in there and the lady that did the ultrasound comes in with him and he sits down and they're just staring at me. They're waiting on me to talk. I'm waiting on them because I'm like, I don't know what. I mean, I was so naive now looking back at that. I just had no clue that anything was going on. He looks at me and he says, "We see something suspicious on this scan, and it's suspicious enough that I feel like we should do a biopsy. And there are lymph nodes that also look suspicious. So I think a biopsy is the next move, but we can't do them here. So we're going to have to schedule that out. And your gynecologist will be in touch." They just keep staring at me after that. I'm just like, okay. But internally, everything's spinning. I am like, I don't know. I just floated my way out to the car. I don't remember getting up and leaving. I don't know how I got in the car. And I got to the car and I had definitely the worst panic attack I've ever had in my life. Thankfully, my gynecologist is a family friend and I called her. She was off that day and I could not pull myself together. What struck me as concerning is that he said something looks suspicious. But when he mentioned the lymph nodes, that's when it hit me. And so I called her and I was squalling and I don't know how she even made out what I was saying, but I said something about the lymph nodes and I said, he's sending the report over, they're wanting a biopsy, and she's trying to calm me down. She said she put in an alert for my report to come straight to her phone, even though she was off that day, so she could see what it was and figure it out. She tried to call Jordan to get him to come drive me home, but I told her, like, no, I'm fine. Just, I'll sit here and I'll pull it together before I drive. And then at this point, I called Jordan and tell him, and he is still so hopeful at this point. He is not being negative at all. I'm basically writing my eulogy at this point, and I mean, I'm just telling like it is. That's where I was mentally. And so he is so calm. He's like, it's fine. Like, it's just going to be fine. It's fine. I sat there and I'm thinking like, okay, I've got to call my mom, but how do you spring this news on somebody? And I mean, at that point I didn't know anything, but I felt like she needed to know. And now on the other side of it, she has told me many times that she wants to like bend me over her knee and whip me for not telling her sooner. But I don't know. I didn't want to burden other people with that until I knew, I guess, because she's busy. My in-laws have a business. They were busy. I didn't want to put that on anybody else. So I called Jordan and then I called Stephanie. And I think at that point, she was the one that was like, you've got to call your mom, because she was going to call her for me, because I can't remember who made me, but
it was
I
me.
called.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I called mom and, she was at work, and I would love for her to tell her side of it. But as a mom, I can't imagine my kid springing that kind of news just out of the blue. And I called her and I'm squalling, and she is the most positive, perky person that you've ever met in your life. She works in the medical field. So I know in her mind she knew what it meant, but she was not at all letting me know what it meant. She leaves work immediately and comes up, and I call my mother-in-law, who has Taylor babysitting her that day. She still has no clue what's going on. And I tell her, and so she comes and brings Taylor home. And so that's kind of how I told them. And then my doctor called me after I got home that evening, and she said, it says on your scan that it's BIRAD4, and I don't know what this gauge is other than like for breast cancer. I know like 3, you're good. 4 is it's suspicious, tumor, mass, whatever. 5 is like we see it on there and we're positive that it's cancer without doing a biopsy. And I was at 4, which means we see it, but we don't know. So that was like peace of mind for me, is like, okay, there is something there, but you know, if it was like they're pretty certain it's cancer, I would have been BIRAD 5. She says the first biopsy appointment is like 3 weeks from now. Let me see what I can do. I will beg and I'll plead for you. We'll see. At this point, it's Thursday after I felt the lump for the first time on Sunday. So it's just a few days later, but Stephanie can attest to the fact that this felt like years. That It was 4 days, but it felt like centuries went by.
I did not think it was 4 days.
It was. Believe me, it was. And so she calls back probably within 30 minutes, and she says, I have a friend who has a breast center, what do you call it? Like, she specializes in breast health, and she has practice. She's went off on her own, and I called her to see if she would do us a huge favor, and she said she could do your biopsy in her office on Monday. I was so happy, but then so scared, because this all made it so real. At this point, I hadn't thought of like a biopsy yet. The longest weekend ever. I take that back. It wasn't the longest weekend. Some of the weekends to come were longer, but so I go into her office, and I just see the pink ribbons everywhere. I'm sitting in the lobby. In that moment, when I'm sitting in a practice that specializes in breast cancer and breast health, that really sunk in, like what my reality was about to be, regardless of what it was, if it was normal or if it was cancer. That just, it was awful. And I will tell in a later episode the story of the biopsy. But long story short, I was by myself. I had no idea that she was going to give me any kind of news. I was alone because I thought, I'm going to do this biopsy. She's going to send me home. She's going to call me with results later, you know, whatever. So I go in and I sit down, and she is going to do an ultrasound guided biopsy. She starts with the ultrasound, and she's like, let me just see where the mass is, and we're going to go from there. And when she puts the ultrasound thing down, she sees it within seconds, and she looks at me and she says, I don't have to do a biopsy on this and send it off. I can tell you right now, it's cancer. And she said, I'm going to do a biopsy because we'll have to have that to determine stage and type, but I don't have to do this to know. My whole life was turned upside down in that moment. You cannot describe to anybody what that feels like until, I mean, you know, once you've been there. But I just, again, I'm in shock. So I just stared at her and I didn't say a word. She starts laughing, literally laughing. And I just looked at her and I was like, what? And she said, your neck breaks out when you have anxiety. You wear your anxiety like a necklace. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. I wish I could. I really do wish I could. And I really want to say her name on here, because I never want anybody to ever go there ever again, because that was the worst doctor experience I've ever had. And so she is sitting there laughing at me, and I didn't even say a thing. I just am like, whatever, let's get this over with. So she goes on to do the biopsy, and she's telling me all about her life and her kids, and I'm just like letting it go in one ear and out the other. I'm trying to process all of this, but I really just want to punch her in the face, to be honest. Like, I had so many emotions going on at once. And I know nobody telling you that you have cancer, they're not going to be your favorite person in the world, but the way she did it was traumatizing. And that's the easiest way I can say that. We go through the biopsy, and at this point, it's Monday of the week of Thanksgiving. And she said, because it's Thanksgiving, I'm not going to get the results like by Wednesday. And I'm going out of town this weekend. So you're just going to have to wait till Monday to hear anything. It's probably going to be next week, Monday at the earliest, maybe later. She is so confident that this is cancer that they go ahead and do the genetic blood work. They normally do that later, but she just was like, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to skip that step. I go through this appointment. And I go out to my car, I call my mom, I talk to her the entire way home and tell her basically it's cancer. I have no clue what, when, how, whatever. I could tell in her voice that she was trying to hold it together, but she couldn't. She was really struggling, but she was trying to be positive. And then I got home and Jordan looked at me with this face. He looked at me with a face I'll never forget, with so much hope, and I just shook my head no. I just felt like, you talk about killing somebody. The look on his face, it was awful. And it was so hard. I called everybody. At this point, still nobody knew except just that handful of people. So I told Jordan, I was like, I've got to get out of here. I cannot sit here all week, wait on these results. And so where else do we go other than the happy place? And so we go to Disney and spend Thanksgiving there. And it was the worst Disney trip of my entire life. I will never forget that feeling of just like, I wanted to enjoy it, but in the back of my mind, so many times, I just remember thinking like, this could be it. I might not ever be back with my family again. It just was really hard. And so it was hard to be distracted there, because that sounds so stupid to cry over Disney World, but that's like a really happy place for us. And it didn't feel happy then. And so we come home, and we drove home on Monday, and I kept looking at my phone. I probably checked my phone 4,000 times, and I had people texting me all day long. Have you heard anything? Have you heard anything? And like, no, believe me, I'll tell you when I do. And so we finally got home, and it was like 4:20, and I'm like, okay, she closes at 5. Let's just go get something to eat, and, we'll just go on about our day. At this point, I kind of felt relief, because I knew it's probably not going to be this day that I get the call. So it just, I don't know. I was in a stage of denial at that point. If I don't know and she hasn't called me, then I'm still fine. It's still not cancer until they confirm that it's cancer. And so I know a lot of this sounds really silly, but it's just like the mental side of it. The mental side of cancer is the hardest part, and it's just where I was at that point mentally. So we go to eat at our favorite Mexican restaurant, and I could take you to the booth that we were sitting at. They sit down our food, and my phone starts vibrating, and I look at it. It's literally 4:58, and it's her office. And I looked at Jordan, and I'm like, should I answer it? Should I not? And he said, it's up to you. If you want to answer it, or if you just want to enjoy the rest of this day. Basically, like, it almost felt like it's like the last day that you'll ever be fine. So just wait if you want to. I let it go to voicemail, and her voicemail was so short and cold. I wish I saved it, because I don't feel like people would even believe how awful it was. She just was like, I got your results, call me back, but I'm only going to be here for 2 minutes. I'm closing, bye. Like, that was it. So fast and so horrible. I'm telling you, this lady should have never been a doctor. She is the worst doctor that I've ever met. I go out to the car and I call her, and she answers, even though it was 5 o'clock at this point. And she says, did you enjoy your trip? And I said, yeah, and I guess. And she said, well, it's back to reality. And this came back as positive for cancer, just like I told you it would. So they're going to call you tomorrow to set up a meeting. You're going to come in, and we're going to get the staging and type, and we'll have a sit-down meeting next week in my office. Bye. And hangs up. And that's what she left me with. I just was sitting there like, again, this lady has turned my world upside down, shook it, and then threw it out in the dumpster, and then stomped on it, I feel like. So I go back in and tell Jordan, and we leave. I had to start making phone calls, and that was so hard to tell, because everybody was trying to be so positive and hopeful. And so I started telling the ones that knew, And I knew I was going to wait until the next day to start texting like extended family and other friends and tell them. And I knew nobody would believe me because it came out of nowhere. So I met with her a week from that Monday. So at this point, it's been 2 weeks since I felt the lump. Or 3. Has it been 3 weeks at that point? I don't even know.
I think it'd been 3.
Yeah, you're right. It had been 3 weeks since the very beginning. And we sat down at a conference table. It felt so like just a box that she had to check off. It felt so impersonable. It was horrible. My mom came up and went with me and Jordan. And so we were all 3 there. And she sits down a stack of paper in front of me. And at the top, I could see where she wrote 3B and had it circled. And I didn't know what that meant. And she started talking about types of cancer and hormone positive or not. And mine was triple negative. So it was estrogen negative, progesterone negative, and HER2 negative. It was negative all the way across. The genetic test came back negative, which means I didn't get it from my genetics and I don't pass it on to my kids. Taylor doesn't have any higher chance than anybody else to ever have breast cancer. But when she said stage 3, I felt the biggest load lifted off my shoulders because she said stage 3 is treatable and curable. And when she said curable, that's the only word that I heard and that went with me the rest of the conversation. We were there for an hour. And she went through everything from surgery options to radiation. Like there is so much information being thrown at me, but I didn't care. I just was holding on to stage 3, treatable, curable. That's all that I cared about. And she said, until you go for an MRI and PET scan, we don't know that it has or hasn't spread. So right now it's stage 3, but if it's went further than just that mass and your lymph nodes, then it would be considered stage 4, and stage 4 is not curable, but it is treatable. I didn't care at that point. I just knew that it was stage 3, and that was the best news that I had heard the entire time. I mean, it still wasn't good news, but it was better than what it could have been. And so 8 days after that, they scheduled me for a PET scan and an MRI. And then 2 days after that, I met my oncologist for the first time. And he confirmed then that it was only stage 3. It hadn't spread anywhere. That appointment was the best appointment that I had from the beginning until that point, because he was the first person to say, like, I'm so sorry this is happening to you, but you can make it through it. And nobody up till that point, other than my friends and family, were giving me, like, if you would have asked that surgeon that did the biopsy, she had already had the grave dug out back. I mean, she just was so brutal. That appointment, when he said that it was only stage 3, that was a feeling that I will never be able to explain. I could have skipped my way out of there like a little schoolgirl. I was so happy. Yes, you just confirmed that I do have cancer and it is stage 3, but it's not stage 4. And that's all that I cared about. He was so kind and the best, and one of the best doctors that I have. And I can't imagine having went through this without him, because he has been awesome the entire time. He wanted me to start chemo. At this point, it was like December 16th-ish. I don't know, give or take. And he wanted me to start chemo within the next 10 days. When he said that, I burst into tears and was begging him to please just let me get through Christmas. Again, at this point, I did feel more hopeful than I did before, but in the back of my mind, as morbid as it sounds, I truly felt like this was probably going to be my last Christmas with my kid. I wanted that to just be normal. I didn't want to be sick because I didn't know how chemo was going to affect me. He compromised and we went for December 28th. I went then for my first treatment, and then I finished my treatments in May. And I'm going to get more into like the treatment stuff in a later episode, surgery, radiation, all that. That's the story. I say all this to say, do your self checks. I did not. I never did. They asked me every time when I went to the doctor, and I would say no. She would get on to me. I would do it for like a week after that and go on about my business. If something feels off, push. go to the doctor. If they won't let you do testing, push and be your own advocate. I did. I didn't have to. My doctor, I think she would have done the scan for me anyways, but if I would have listened to her first, and I'm not throwing shade on her at all. She's a phenomenal gynecologist and I love her. But if I would have went by what she said first and like, yes, I felt it move. I think it's fine. It's probably just a cyst. It would have been stage 4 by the time I found it. I pushed and was begging her for a scan. So that's the biggest takeaway. I don't know. I wish that I would have paid more attention when I started hurting. Hindsight's 2020. I pegged it off as cycles, and cancer doesn't always hurt. So I feel like my case was not the normal. I think it was just the kind of cancer that I have.
So some of that story I had not heard. Like some of it I had, but there was, I don't know how to say this. Like it wasn't like Shelby and I weren't talking every day, because we were. But Shelby and I do talk every day about just, I mean, she'll say random Joe things. And so I remember her saying that she thought that people would want to hear, like, it's almost like, I remember telling somebody there's not a book to check out from the library. I mean, maybe there is, but there's no book that's like, my best friend got diagnosed with cancer. What do I do? I remember that one of the things that I tried to do was not like push. Like I didn't try to like, okay, what now? Like what happened? Like tell me in great detail. Because I wanted it to be almost like normal, because I could tell that Shelby was trying to disassociate, if that makes sense, a lot of the time. Like she was saying she went to Disney and that was trying to disassociate. And there was other things that I was thinking of that now I can't remember that she was doing, like almost like cleaning out her house. Like somebody was, do you remember doing that? Like
I do.
Somebody was coming over to inspect the house. It was just like anything that she could do to keep her mind like occupied. So I didn't want every conversation that we had to be about cancer. I wanted it to be like normal, so to speak. I remember that I was also disassociating with her, because I was like, if she's going to disassociate, then I am really good at that. So I can also do that and go down that road. So I remember when she called me, like she said before the biopsy, that's when I started to think like, okay, this might be bad. But to go off of Jordan was positive poly. So I was thinking, okay, if he's positive poly, I can be positive poly, because I'm normally negative. So when Shelby told me that she did have cancer, it was that night. I think you texted me, it was 5:00. I'm pretty sure I looked at the clock and it was 5:02, I think. And all it said was, she said it was positive. That was it. That was the only text. And I was on the way to buy a couch. I could not tell you anything about buying that couch that night. We ended up leaving with a couch that had speakers in it, because I just let Derek go loose. I couldn't think, I couldn't do. And I remember too, again, it was like not setting in for me. And I do think I told this to Shelby, but I did not. And Shelby knows, like we've talked about on the podcast, I'm not like an overly emotional person. I'm just not like one to just cry and cry and cry like all the time. So the first time that it actually felt real was when Shelby told everyone and they started making her those shirts. And she does know this. So I ordered one of the shirts, but when I saw the shirt, like, I don't know, I don't remember if you sent it to me. I don't even remember what the shirt said. Is it like Shelby's?
It said, like, I wear pink for Shelby or something like that.
Yeah. For some reason, that was like the first time that it was like reality was setting in for me. Like, I mean, it had set in for Shelby. I'm just saying for me, I had been disassociating, almost like playing the role of like help her pretend that this is not really happening, if that makes sense. That was reality. And I remember Derek came downstairs and he's like, what in the world? And I'm just like, I don't know. I just saw the shirt and it feels real now. And I think it was because also like other people knew and they were texting me, if that makes sense. And so it was like, it was like we were leaving the, I don't know, what do you call it? Like the fantasy land of like, maybe this is happening to like this is happening.
Yeah.
And so I remember telling Derek, I was like, I feel very, guilty. I'm going to say this just because other people are going to feel this. I know they are. I was like, I feel really guilty because what I'm like feeling is like, why me? I know it wasn't like happening to me, but this is what was going through my mind. I'm like,
Hold on.
All
Let
these
me just say, because you didn't want to start from scratch with a new best friend because I knew too much. That's what it was.
That's right, because it was just like, well, Shelby knows. There's a lot that's went on in my life in, like, what, the last, like, 10 years, and Shelby's always the one that's, like, listening to me, like, tell these crazy stories about, like, my family and this and that, and, like, and so just in my mind, I'm, like, thinking, why? Like, why? Like, my best friend, it has to be my best friend, has to go through this. Like, it was almost like a guilty of association, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Like,
Yeah.
you know. And I remember Derek was like, this has nothing to do, like, with you or, you know, like, this is just
Mhm.
what happened. But I was, like, feeling guilty because I'm like, all these crazy things, dumb things always happen to us. She got dragged into this, you know.
For
How could
what
this happen?
for what it's worth, I know how crazy your life is, and I never one time ever thought to blame you. So there's that.
Well, I just remember, like, having those feelings, and I did tell Shelby this recently. I do remember, like, we were leaving the house, and I don't remember, Derek was saying something, like, asking me something about it. You know, which she briefly talked about, like, she was gonna have to go and get a PET scan. This part she did not say. When she got the PET scan, they said that they thought there might be something on her collarbone, but they were not
Mhm.
sure.
Mhm.
And I was panicking at that point, like really, really bad panicking. I was not telling her that I was panicking, but I was panicking horribly. Like, she texted that to me. They think there was a spot on my collarbone. And I remember I pulled over and I was like, absolutely just like losing it at this point. I was thinking, like, this is not good. This is not good. Like, I knew what that meant, that it was going to mean stage 4. I don't think you actually said that. Like, that would
I
mean it's stage 4,
didn't.
but I knew that
Yeah.
in my mind.
Yeah.
So I remember telling, like, I had pulled over and I think I called Derek and I was like, okay, the house could burn down. I could lose everything. Like, it wouldn't matter to me today. Like, as long as they come back and they say, like, the PET scan, that was wrong. Like, I won't care. I think it was maybe just like a few days, but it felt like months
Mhm.
before they were like, okay, no, they didn't see it.
Mhm.
Or like, he didn't see what they were talking about. I think that's what he said.
Yeah, so I guess I should say this. The radiologist on the PET scan and the MRI said that there was a lymph node behind my collarbone that possibly maybe lit up a little bit. And my oncologist, when I sat down with him, he said, I'm calling this stage 3B because they did say this about this lymph node, but he said, when I look at the report, I do not see what they see. And it's so small that we couldn't even biopsy it to see if it was anything, anyways. And every scan after that they ever did, it never lit up again. So they said it could very well just be like an inflammation type thing. So
Mm-hmm.
that would have, if it was cancer, it would have bumped me to stage 4. But my oncologist did not see what the radiologist saw, and it never showed up again. So I don't know if it was there and the Lord healed me of that, but it wasn't there, and I'm going with that. That's why I didn't even mention it. But it definitely was scary. But when he told
Mm-hmm.
me he didn't see it, like I said, that appointment I could have skipped to the car. That was the best day. I mean, when you get bad news after bad news after bad news, and then
Mm-hmm.
finally have a little sliver of good news, that's a good day. So
Yeah.
that's the backstory to that.
I don't know if you feel this way, but I'm going to say for me, it felt like an eternity from the time that they said, yes, it's cancer and the biopsy came until you started chemo and like the PET scan results had came back and then they started
Mhm.
chemo. That to me felt like the longest amount of time. That's where I'm saying that's where I was like, they were doing the Shelby shirts and I
Mhm.
was having a meltdown and it was in like that frame.
Yeah. So I actually wrote down a timeline earlier. I went back and I journaled everything the entire time. I kept up with all my appointments.
Mm-hmm.
And it was over the course of about 6 weeks from feeling the lump to the first
Mm-hmm.
chemo treatment. It was 6 weeks.
Yeah. And didn't it feel like an eternity?
Well, 6 weeks is a long time, but when they
It
tell
is.
you you have an aggressive cancer that's growing rapidly, 6 weeks was like, I mean, then after I begged him to let me wait until after Christmas, then I'm like, should I have done that? Like, is this?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember asking him, if we wait one extra week, is that going to matter? Like in the long run, is 1 week? Because if this is going to shave time off my life, I'm not worried about it. We'll celebrate Christmas early. She was 5 at that time. She wouldn't have known the difference if it was Christmas or not, but I knew. But no, ultimately he was like, 1 week is not going to make a difference. And now I realize that he's like, I mean, it's been 6 weeks. So what's one more at this point?
Mm-hmm. Well, back to the shirt. I felt really bad. And I told Shelby I felt bad about it, that I could not wear the shirt. But I did not wear that shirt until the day that Shelby came home from her last chemo. Then I wore that shirt. But in the meantime, I went and bought a shirt. And if you know me, you may have seen me wearing it. But I don't tell people like it's what I call the Shelby shirt. But it was a shirt and it said, "God's got this." It was just like a shirt that I just saw on like Instagram or like an ad. And so I was like, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to wear this shirt. And so I think they were wearing the shirts when Shelby had chemo that day. People would wear these.
Yeah, they did on Thursdays.
Yeah, I wear pink for Shelby. And so I would wear the green shirt because I just couldn't do it. Like I just couldn't wear it. I felt like whenever I even looked at it, it made me feel sick. And so I wear the green shirt. So on the day that Shelby had her very last chemo, I put on the shirt and I was able to wear the shirt that very last day. But that's what I want to say. If you feel like, I don't want to say guilty because you're like, I'm making this about me, like I'm having my own feelings. You are going to have your own feelings about it, especially when it's like the person that you're texting all the time. Because like I said, I want it to be like you almost want it to be like where you're not talking about cancer, but you have to talk about it. You know what I mean? But you don't want it to be all that you're talking about. And like that's your whole friendship now is like based around this cancer. So I would still tell Shelby my problem. She still got to hear it. She acted like she wanted to, even if she did.
I loved it.
She did it. Even if she didn't, she still got to hear all the crazy things that go on. She can attest that it's really for real. I mean, even Jordan's like, will say like, wow, it's been really quiet for Stephanie lately. That means something really big is about to happen.
Yes. Yep. He'll say, I haven't heard you and Steph on the phone this week. That means there's no drama in her family or in her personal life to communicate about.
Yeah. So I remember asking different people, I'm like, do you act normal or do you tiptoe and not tell your problems? And they're like, no, you need to like still tell her and just treat her like you always did. So they're like, if you would have called her, when you had a bad day, then you're going to have to call her when you have a bad day. Even if you're feeling like you're inconveniencing her because she's sick.
I want to say, though, that helped me so much because my very closest friends would do that. And other people or other friends would text me, hey, how are you feeling today? And I'm like, I didn't want it to be about me. I didn't want somebody to ask me every single day how I'm feeling. Now, don't get me wrong. Those messages out of the blue, hey, I'm thinking about you, I'm praying for you, I'm checking in on you. I'm not discounting that at all because I had an absorbent amount of people around me rallying with me. And I don't want to discredit that. But I'm saying like, if you are supporting somebody that's going through this, whether it be a friend, a family member, a spouse, normal is good because you forget really, really quick what normal feels like. Mm-hmm. And I still, to this day, like I'm over a year out, and I still I get little glimpses of what my life used to be like pre-cancer. And I'm like, wow, this actually feels normal today. And you forget that so fast. So normal is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that would be my biggest takeaway because people have texted me, believe it or not, and they'll be like, what do you put in the basket? And I think we're going to go over some of those Q&A things. But I think that's one of the biggest things that people ask me is how do you act? How do you react? And the biggest thing that I got, if I talked to anybody else that had a best friend that went through cancer, they would say, you're going to have to act like you always act or she's going to notice.
Okay. So thank you for being with us today and holding space for this story. If you're listening and facing something similar, we see you. You're not walking it alone. Join us next week as we welcome our friend Emma, whose story is heartbreakingly similar to mine.